Now, there's a topic here which has been pretty broad-based, and a lot of people are showing concern, and there's different interest in different continents, and I'm going to ask you all to make some comment about the question here is, what can we do to prevent more GM foods in our society? Is there a need to inhibit the expansion of GM foods? Are they inherently bad? Are they inherently good? Perhaps, Bo, I'll start with you, since you would see both the American and European viewpoint. Any comments? Do you feel strongly about them one way or the other?
I feel relatively strongly in favor of some use of transgenic approaches, as we like to call it. I think what we have seen to date has largely been in economical terms and not really in terms when it comes to health benefits. We know, for example, today that virtually all diabetics are given recombinant human insulin, and we certainly see the benefits from that. When it comes to GM foods, what we have seen has been pest resistance, a lot of those things for the farmers. And I think that there would be a new generation. There's a lot of research going on in China and India now, putting in, for example, bioactive proteins. You can put in a breast milk protein into staple foods, and thereby preventing diarrhea in infants and children, for example, if you put that into. So significant benefits, health benefits in that. I still think that tremendous caution should be used, and one should step very, very carefully when going on with these. But I think it has potential, and I think as scientists we should not put a blind eye to this avenue. I think it has promise, but I still think that a lot of basic research is needed before it even gets to the applied side of the research. But I think the health benefits, the nutritional benefits and the health benefits when it comes to populations worldwide, in particular in developing countries, I think is something worthwhile exploring.
Thank you. Dennis, some of these foods have been called Frankenstein foods. Do you think that they're being adequately tested? Are there regulations in place to protect us from so-called Frankenstein foods?
Yeah, I think, you know, this is a subject that has a complexity beyond a 5-minute answer, and it's not necessarily a nutritional question. It has concerns about agriculture, the environment, and the like. However, like Bo, I believe that most of the concerns for biotech foods have been, you know, exaggerated beyond the actual data sets that exist. And I realize the person who wrote the question, who wrote it in a way that suggests that they are, you know, not particularly enamored of food biotechnology. We probably look at the data in a somewhat different way, and it's, you know, it is a somewhat controversial area. However, in America, as many of you know, we've been eating, you know, a very sizable amount of biotech foods for over a decade, and the history of use in America is remarkably safe in that context. The other thing I think, you know, that we need to deal with is that is the issue of what is a natural food. I mean, how far back do we go to decide that something is natural? So there's practically nothing that you can eat today that you get anywhere that is the way it was put on earth by, you know, God and the first, you know, time it was discovered. I saw a product the other day in America which is a health food product, organic product, all natural ingredients. And one of the ingredients was canola oil. Now, I don't know if the people in the audience know what canola oil is, but it's an entirely man-made oil. It was made by traditional breeding. It's rapeseed oil in which erucic acid, a toxic component, was removed. And eventually this oil was recognized. It was done in Canada, which is where the word canola comes from. And it's a product that doesn't exist in nature. It is now on a natural food product because it is in nature, but it's entirely man-made. So at which point do we call something natural? At which point do we call it unnatural? And that's a very complicated business, you know. But I don't have the concerns about the biotech foods that we have already in the food supply.
Thank you. And the uniquely viewpoint from the UK, perhaps, Peter, if you have so 1 or 2 words, if you could focus it on, is there a nutritional need for that? Are our foods so depleted that we really need to be putting in genes to make them more nutritious or not?
Was that the original question? I think I've been spotted for some reason. I don't know the answer. For a country like the UK, for a country like Australia, for most of our populations, there probably is not a nutritional need. But I think the important comment in that regard was Denny's, in the terms that one must look at this in the context, and one must appreciate what particularly genetic modification is trying to achieve and what its intention is. And what has been sadly lacking, and was most definitely lacking to a certain extent in temperate debates that went on in the European Commission and in the UK about 14, 15 years ago, was that people cottoned on to this idea, this concept that Bob epitomized by talking about Frankenstein foods. Well, of course, they're not Frankenstein foods, they're nothing of that entity. They are perhaps accelerated changes, accelerated evolution, and they do need to be seen in the appropriate context. And I think, above all, everybody needs to participate about the perceived and desired outcomes from this contextualization, so they understand the particular purpose. What went wrong, I think, in Europe was that there was not an extended consultation. People were not brought on board. They were not aware of the problems or the benefits. That would have certainly put that sort of perspective on it that Bob was implying in the question with nutritional necessity. There may be other needs, though, because in a global market, these things need to be addressed. Unfortunately, many of the big players in the European scene were people who were very strongly in support of genetic modification. We never really had a chance to discover just why they were interested. It might have been the novelty value, it might have been the perceived economic benefits, but in those days, even the economic benefits were not necessarily explored as much as they could. I'm labouring these points because I am very much aware that we, speaking as Europeans, are now being made to look again at the attitude that has been taken, because there is extensive use now of genetic modified products elsewhere. We do not see the doom and gloom that have been prophesied, and I think that there is going to be a need to open up the debate, and I hope very much that the debate this time will be much more reasonable and conciliatory rather than as confrontational and emotional as it was last time. And in that way, I think we should find some way of addressing the ethical and other issues and the other dimensions that really are part and parcel of this. But these sort of issues are not unique just to genetic modified foods. They really are emerging now increasingly as underpinning values that need to be implemented and considered with all innovations and implementations of new developments on the food chain as a whole.
Thank you, Peter.